Welcome to the Mark Allen Coaching, another Zoom conference here, Zoom meeting. I'm sure a lot of you saw that Ironman got postponed till February 6th, Ironman October. So one of the reasons that it got postponed, at least on the surface anyway, was they were saying that there were not enough qualifying races going into it, so they wouldn't be able to actually fill the field up, which is probably true. You know, so far there's been no races on the calendar. I've heard that they were trying to get Lake Placid at the very end of July to be kind of like their kickoff Ironman event. But then somebody yesterday who was in the race said that they'd heard that it's probably now going to be canceled. You'd think I would have an inside track to this, right? You know, but anyway, I hear about it probably after I know that I hear about it actually after the athletes get a notification who are in the races. We've had a couple people who were in the 70.3 World Championships qualified. They got an email from Ironman before I found out that it was going to be postponed, saying that it will be postponed. That one, I'm not sure if they know when that will take place. I haven't heard anything definitive. Anyway, so a lot of you are still trying to figure out, okay, what do I do with my training? What's important to work on? How can I optimize this time? And one of the things, there's a couple more people on in here. Hey, Steve. Hey, Nadine. Good to see you in here. Let's see. Hold on one sec. Anyway, one of the things that's hold on one sec. There we go. Okay. So anyway, you know, one of the things that I'm seeing from a lot of folks, all of you guys, is that a lot of the training that you're doing is sort of sifting through a lot of the different training zones, you know, and I understand how this kind of works. You know, I think all of us who like to do sports like this, we're kind of used to having these, I guess I'd call them in sort of intense experiences periodically, i.e. a race or a hard workout or something that's really challenging. And a lot of what you're doing right now is still just kind of base work, just because a lot of you have shifted back to maintenance training. You've gotten off of racing plans, and there's just not as much speed work. So there's not as much sort of that intense stuff. And so a lot of the workouts that are supposed to be aerobic, people are kind of like drifting over the top of that zone by 5 or 10 beats. And that's, you know, aerobic and anaerobic are two different physiologies. You know, I'll give you guys all know this, but I'll just go over it again. You know, aerobic is your fat burning, anaerobic is your carbohydrate burning. Fat burning capability is what gives you the endurance. Even if you're doing a sprint race, a lot of the performance you're going to get, it comes from that aerobic fat burning ability. When you switch over into that anaerobic physiology, when your heart rate goes over the top of the training zones that you have, like for your endurance workouts, it shifts you into that anaerobic physiology, which is it's not necessarily a bad thing. You want to do that when you have your speed and tempo sessions for sure, and you want to push those as hard as you can. But in the aerobic sessions, when you kind of drift over that, if it's just for a couple minutes, you know, maybe you went up a little hill or a rise, or, you know, you're trying to stand somebody's wheel or something, probably if it's just a little bit over and it's like a minute or 2 or 3, it's not going to make that physiological switch. All of you are well trained. A couch potato, if they go over that top end of their aerobic zone, even 15, 20 seconds, they can make that switch into anaerobic. At the low end of anaerobic physiology, you know, let's say your maximum aerobic heart rate on your long workouts is, let's say, 140 beats a minute. And so you're cruising along, all of a sudden you look down, it's 145, and you go, I feel really good. You know, it's not hard, I can still talk, you know, all that kind of stuff. When you're at the low end of a physiological range, the low end of anaerobic, you have so much capacity to go higher on it. And so it actually feels very, very easy. It feels smooth, it feels comfortable. When you're at the top end of the aerobic range, you know, let's say between 135 and 140 in this example, you're pushing the limit of what your fat burning physiology can manage before you make that switch. And so it can feel awkward. It can feel not so comfortable. And your body's actually wanting you to switch over to carbohydrate burning because it's actually like sort of accessing high octane fuel for your race car. You get energy a lot quicker. And so all of a sudden it's like, whew, okay, now I can move a lot easier, a lot smoother, and it doesn't feel quite as uncomfortable as it did or awkward as it can feel when you're right at the top of that aerobic zone. So again, a lot of people are sort of, I'm seeing, drifting over into that low end of the anaerobic physiology. Again, not a bad thing, except we need to do it. It's good to do it at the times when you have your tempo and speed workouts. When you switch over into that physiology, it is high stress on your body. It's high stress on the body. It causes that fight or flight thing to go on. Your adrenal system is activated. And so, your ancient genetics are reading the situation like there's danger around, even though you're having fun. You're out there and you're training, you're having fun. There's part of your physiology that's thinking this is fight or flight, okay? When you're at the low end of your anaerobic range like that, you're 5 beats over, 10 beats over. In the tempo workouts, you'll get that. Those are race pace kind of things. But if it's something you ended up doing every day in your workouts, you're actually shutting off your body's ability to start to keep developing that aerobic fat burning engine, okay? When you switch over, it doesn't, and you really get into that anaerobic zone, anaerobic physiology, it doesn't go back to hardcore fat burning for 7 to 9 hours. So as best as you can, kind of try to stick to those zones during this time, because this is a period where you can really work on that aerobic base, that endurance physiology. For sure, when you have your get Kurt and Jen in here, when you have your speed workouts and tempo workouts, for sure, go for it. The objective in those is to get your heart rate up. And so even in those, you'll see that there's obviously a range that I've suggested that you work in. The main goal is to get above that low number, and then however high you can go, that's fine. If you go over the top of the range in your tempo and speed workouts, that's fine. It's completely the opposite of what people will, of the goal of aerobic training, the aerobic sessions, the endurance sessions, the aerobic development, the recovery sessions, okay? So you're doing a tempo workout, you feel super good, whatever the recommended intervals are, just sort of try to follow the general template of it, of, the amount of time that you're going hard and then the time that you're recovering for each of the intervals. You can push it, go for it, okay? So that's one thing to kind of work on during this period, is to just really work on that aerobic base. Most of you don't have any kind of races coming up. Some of you are doing the virtual racing that Ironman's putting up, which is kind of a interesting, fun way to do things. But again, try to work on that aerobic physiology. Go for it in the speed work. Races will come back. Ironman's working to put together a whole protocol as far as social distancing, and they've looked at the number of touch points when people, from start to finish on a big race. And, there's 500, 1,000 different places where things are getting touched and you're getting handed things and you're in contact with people. And so they're really working on how to integrate kind of a social distancing, relatively safe way to have some races come back. I am not basing this on anything other than a feeling. My guess is that races won't start up again until sometime in September. That's not based on anything other than just my guesstimate. Ironman hasn't alluded to that. I haven't read anything about that. So a lot of you might have races now, July, August. If, you have some options there, at least with Ironman, you can stick it out and see if they're going to happen. or you can transfer it into other races that might be later in the fall. So, kind of think about that, see where you're at with it. For sure, keep up the training, work a lot on core and movement that's not linear. So when you're doing some of your strength work, do some core work where you are, you're moving side to side, and things are not just as linear as you normally do. It's a great time to strengthen all of those muscles that hold everything together when you get tired. You've seen in Ironman where people come across the line and they're like bent over and they're barely able to stand up, and it looks so painful. It's just that all the core and the diaphragm muscles have just kind of slowed down. They've weakened and they've gotten tired, and then they can't hold the structure up. So any kind of core work you can do right now is super good. One of the things you can do to help your diaphragm, and this is kind of a fun, brutal exercise to do, fun but not really that fun, is you can. Let me back up. The diaphragm is like any other muscle. When you use it a lot, it can actually fatigue. And so, I didn't realize this until I started working out in Boulder, Colorado, where at any pace at altitude that you're running at or cycling at, your breathing rate is going to be higher than it is at sea level for that pace. And so it really started to work my diaphragm a lot more, because I was just breathing a lot heavier, a lot faster, a lot quicker than I was at sea level. When I got down to sea level and race, I felt like this whole area never got tired. And so anyway, there's an exercise that you can do where you breathe in to a short count, like 2 or 3. And then you breathe out to 2 or 3. And then you breathe into 5 and out to 5. And then breathe into 7 and out to 7. And you just keep going and get the breath in longer and longer and longer, and the breath out longer and longer and longer, until you just can't do it anymore. And at first, you might only be able to get up to a count of 15 or 20. Later on, you might be able to do it to a count of 30 or 40 or something like that. That will strengthen that diaphragm. You've seen some of those devices that you can stick in your mouth, and it restricts your breathing, so you've got to suck in and push out harder to actually get the air in and out. I think that probably will work also, but you can do this just sitting in your house. You don't have to be exercising to do it. And working your diaphragm right now will be an incredible way to strengthen one of those muscles that, again, fatigues in a race much more than you'll ever experience in training, just because you're breathing harder and steady, and you're not resting, you're not stopping. Okay. And a third thing that I think is really a good thing to work on right now is any kind of flexibility in areas of your body that you're not so flexible in. Okay, so maybe it's your glutes, maybe it's your shoulders. If you come from running and you're trying to get better at swimming, chances are your shoulders are kind of tight. And so you can work on shoulder flexibility at this point. Same with running, to get your stride length opened up so that your body's not fighting itself on each one of the strides. Another thing that I've been noticing and seeing is that sometimes people have great cadence rates, and sometimes their cadence rate, running specifically, kind of drops. And so what is ideal? It really depends on your height, your leg length, but somewhere around 170, 180 foot strikes a minute is going to be really, really good if you can kind of work your way up to that if you're not there already. The one thing that happens though, if you're normally running at 150, 160 foot strikes a minute and you up it to 170, 175, your heart rate's going to go up. And so some runs work purely on that cadence rate, because when you're in a race, your cadence rate is going to be about 170 or 180 in Olympic distance, in a half Ironman, maybe not in a full Ironman, but in those 70.3 or shorter, it's definitely going to be at a high cadence rate. practicing that in your training is what will pattern in that neurological firing between your brain and the muscles so that it just happens efficiently without any kind of effort. But it takes effort in the beginning to get it up there. So anyway, if you've never run at that high of a cadence rate, start out with, you're going to have to just shorten your stride up so that it's not like you don't necessarily want to run faster. You just want to get your cadence rate up. So shorten the stride. Probably your heart rate's going to go up. So on some of the runs, don't even worry about the heart rate. Just try to focus on that cadence rate and get it up there. And then on other runs, obviously, you will want to make sure that you kind of stick in those zones. And then if you have to drop the cadence rate down, that's fine. And then eventually those two will start to come together. Your cadence rate will start to become more natural at a higher cadence rate. Your heart rate, as your aerobic physiology develops, your pace is going to pick up, and those two will meet. And then all of a sudden you'll see, oh yeah, I'm running 170 foot strikes a minute. It's easy. My heart rate's still low. My pace is actually getting quicker also. All those things will eventually come together. Swimming is the hardest right now for everyone, obviously. Some places have opened up pools, but it's one person to a lane, and you get an allotted time slot. So, 6-lane pool, there's 6 people swimming instead of 30 or 40 or whatever, So some people have been able to do open water swimming. If you didn't see it on the social wall, our instructions where you can actually download 12 weeks of open water swim workouts into your calendar that I put together. There's 2 a week. One's kind of a shorter open water swim session. The other one is kind of a longer endurance one. They start relatively short, around 30 minutes, and then they work up to somewhere around an hour, 20 minutes for I think the longest one of the endurance ones later on. But if you do have access to open water, instead of just kind of going and swimming and coming home, this helps give a little bit of structure to it. It loads them onto your calendar, so you'll have duplicate workouts. You'll have the open water swims in there and the normal ones. So you can, if you don't like it, you can have them on there, look at them, check them out, and then you can delete them, write some of them down if you know that you're going to be doing open water swimming. Again, a great way to get in some swims. Some of you are lucky, though. I've seen a few people in the pool, so good for you, those of you who can actually access a pool right now. I don't have one here. All of our pools are closed. Caroline asked, do I think that will nationals happen? I am not sure. Again, I don't have a pulse on USAT. I'm assuming that's what you're talking about, USAT nationals. It's the challenge that I see with nationals is that there's a huge number of athletes, and I just am not sure if USAT is going to be able to pull off something that would be kind of acceptable, safety, social distancing kind of stuff. I haven't heard if they're going to cancel or postpone. I don't know if that's even a possibility. A lot of cities aren't allowing postponements just because they have other things in a few months down the road where races want to plop themselves into. If I hear anything, for sure I'll post it on the social wall. But again, I just can't see that nationals happening at this point. But again, I'm basing it all on past news anyway, right? I mean, I know, ugh. But anyway, keep training for them. There might be something else that opens up, and there's a little, I think there can be a little silver lining to this whole process that we're going through here, because, how each of us deals with this unexpected race cancellations, how do I, even without a race, continue to honor myself, honor my fitness with my training? How do I stay consistent? What can I work on now that maybe I didn't have time to before when I was really focused on a performance? I think this will translate into being able to do this exact same thing in races. The longer the race, the better chance there is that something completely unexpected is going to happen, right? So if, for all of you Ironman folks out there, you know that that's just kind of how the day rolls, right? Most things go right, but there might be something that came up that was completely unexpected that you have to deal with. This is practicing how to deal with the unexpected, to just get yourself to go, okay, this is not what I had planned on things looking like. Now, what can I do with it? How can I make the most out of it? And that's something that's really, that's a very potent skill to be able to utilize in a race. I had a number of Ironmans where things weren't looking the way I'd hoped, and so it always came down to, okay, how can I salvage this? What can I do so that at the end of the day, I am happy with how things turned out, at least with my effort? And so, that's sort of like the awareness part of this period here, just being aware of how you're managing this stuff, how you continue to honor yourself with positive actions, or to not honor yourself. All of the companies like Fitbit and the scales that people weigh themselves on, the data goes to a place and then it uploads into the app, all that kind of stuff. They're seeing what people are doing, and I think I've spoken about this before, but people are getting better quality sleep, which is interesting. They are getting more sleep. You don't have a job to get up for. Some of you obviously do have jobs to get up for, but a lot of people don't. They're actually getting more sleep. People are putting on weight. Not a huge amount, though. I think it was only about 1.5 pounds on average, which is pretty darn good. So anyway, I have to ask myself this every day too. It's like, okay, how can I honor myself today within this situation that I'm in? What can I do with my workouts? I did something, I'll share this with you, that I have never done before. I have my iPhone and it's got the little thing that tracks your steps, right? And so you guys can see this, right? See a little, I whacked my head on my surfboard 1 week ago today, and it was a big whack. It split my scalp open all the way to the bone, and it's about 3 inches long. Anyway, blood gushing everywhere. Went to the emergency room. Took them forever to get this blood stopped enough so they could actually see to sew it up. It was a mess. But anyway, got my stitches out a couple days ago. But clearly, I'm not up for going surfing right now. To even run doesn't sound good to me at the moment. So I thought, well, let me go for a walk. I don't walk really. I'll run, but walking is like, I'm an athlete. I don't need to walk, right? So anyway, I took my iPhone and I thought, okay, they're saying, I've read, you need 10,000 steps a day and you're going to live to be 2,000 years old. It's like the fountain of youth, 10,000 steps a day. And so I thought, I wonder how long I've got to walk to actually get 10,000 steps. And so the other day I went out and I walked for, 25 minutes or so. I had to get back for something to make a Zoom thing. And then I was going to go out and do some more walking. Well, I only did about 3,000 steps, and I went out a second time and I got in about another 5,000 steps. And then, so I was still like only at 8,000 steps, and I had already done 2 walks. And I'm like, finally, near sunset, I went out again and I finally got in my 10,000 steps. I got 10,800 steps. I didn't have it on me during the day because I wanted to see how far I really had to walk, or how long it would take me to actually walk that, if it's a conscious thing that I was doing. It was forever. I thought, there's no way the average person is going to go out there and walk 10,000 steps. I mean, it ended up being, I think, 5.5 miles. So it wasn't like it was a massive, if you're running 5.5 miles, boom, it's done, right? But to walk it, it's like, geez. But anyway, I have been walking, and I've been noticing that, when human beings run, we're hardwired for efficiency. And so your body naturally does everything it can to conserve as much energy as it can when it runs. So your Achilles does a lot of the work for you. It loads and it snaps back. You don't have to do a lot. When you're walking, you can actually push and work all the muscles in your ankles and your feet. And just in the few walks like that I've done the last few days, I've seen that this is actually a really good thing for people, for all of you to maybe incorporate into something that you're doing at least a few days a week now, to actually go for a real walk, and not a stroll, but a real walk where you're walking with intention and speed, and really feel all of your feet and your ankles and all the muscles in your legs and your glutes and everything working, because it's slow enough that you can be aware of everything as it's firing or not firing. And I can already feel, just a couple of days of doing this, like the strength in my feet and my ankles is just so much more than it was just a few days ago. As athletes age, the thing that causes the slowdown in your running speed is not your fitness or your cardiovascular, it's weakness in the ankles and the feet. And so this is a very good way to, something that you can do now that will really help give you that integrity and hopefully, enhance the running that you are doing. Caroline's like, walking is so hard to do. I know it is hard to do, especially for people who just run. You think it'd be easy, but it's a completely different beast. So anyway, it's also really good to do if you know that you're going to be doing a race later in the year or next year, an Ironman, where you will be walking during parts of the marathon. If it's going to be part of your situation out there, it's not a bad thing at all. Practice the walking as part of your training so that you actually have walk fitness. Pretty much in any long run that you do, you're going to be able to just run through it. But if you're in your Ironman and you know that you're going to be walking different points, get that walk fitness now. And even if you are not going to be doing any walking in any race, you're doing all short stuff as fast, I think walking is one of the, I'm seeing that I think walking can be something that'll really enhance everything you're doing. It does increase capillary bed flow so that you get increased flushing of the muscles, which is going to be definitely a good thing when you are actually out there running. Anyway, if anybody has any questions, feel free to type them in there, or if you want, I can also unmute you if anybody has a question. You're all so attentive today. I hope everybody's pretty much. Caroline's asking, is the best thing to do to walk barefoot? Not if you're walking far, but I think it's good to walk with shoes that are not overbuilt also. Maybe you're, and this is my theory only, but my feeling is a little bit less shoe when you're walking, you'll be able to actually feel your feet moving a little bit better than if you're in a big padded thing. Obviously, walking doesn't have the same impact as running, so it's not going to be necessarily as important to have as padded of a shoe. So anyway, I hope that gives you guys something to think about, some tools and tips. I'm around. Again, I was out for a few days there because my brain was kind of scrambled up with that little bit of an accident. That was my worst surfing accident, I think. Hopefully my last one. But anyway, it just comes with the territory, the boards and heads and things, when they hit, the head always loses. So anyway, well, thanks for showing up, everybody. I hope you have a great rest of the weekend. Memorial Day coming up, I guess, this following weekend. And, obviously, for sure, if you have any questions, feel free to email me at any time, mark@markallencoaching.com. If you have any questions about your training, obviously, for sure, ask me. I'll try to be on there every day. Again, now looking at the notifications of what you're doing, how it's going, and yeah, thanks for showing up. Have a great Saturday. Bye-bye.